Okay, cool. We are back for Spark Spaces episode 3. As you can see from the very busy screen in front of you, that we've got a packed house today, which is awesome on the back of new Collateral being added to the ecosystem, which we're going to give a bit of a deep dive and an opportunity for everyone here to introduce themselves and the projects. But I just wanted to take a moment. Welcome back to Spark Spaces. Things are flying at rates of knots on our side. Many things exciting that are breaking and going live. We had an extremely busy week last week, and I think we all are still riding on the coattails of that euphoria. I know, Sam, that you took some amazing selfies there with a billboard that was probably a sight to be seen. But welcome to everyone joining us on today's Spaces. And I'm going to hand over to Sam, the CEO of Phoenix Labs, to give us a bit of a recap on the exciting work and all the activities that we embarked on last week. Sam?
So I'll start, I guess, with the Grand Prix that we had the winners selected in New York. I'm actually still in New York. And so at the RWA Summit, we were able to announce the winners, which are BlackRock Biddle, Superstate USTB, and Centrifuge J Treasury from Janus. And so we also, as Phil alluded to, there was a giant billboard that we put up in Times Square that was very cool. Lots of people were taking selfies. It was quite interesting. So that was pretty exciting. And this week is also very exciting because we're onboarding 4 new collaterals into Sparkland. This is one of our largest onboardings at one single time. And so we have and Sophia's just joined us as well. We have these great projects that have just been added as collateral onto Sparkland. And so this is Lombard LBTC, Threshold T BTC, Renzo Easy ETH, and KelpDAO RSE. So these are all great collaterals, and we're already actually seeing some borrowing against them already, actually. I think there's even over 10 million that's been borrowed collectively between them. And so, we just wanted to bring on all the teams, and they can talk about their projects and just run over why this is a great fit for both Spark as well as these teams.
Awesome, Sam. Thank you so much. To make a little bit of order, of course, we want to keep this conversation as natural as possible. But just to kind of formalize the room, I'm just going to shoot through to each speaker and provide an opportunity for you, obviously, to make an introduction to the project, talk a little bit about your asset, and a little bit about yourselves. So I'm going to go rotation on what I see on my screen. So we'll hand it to McLean. Do you want to kick off, and then we'll take it to the rest?
Sure. Thanks, Philip. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I'm McLean Wilkeson. I'm one of the founders of Threshold by way of another project called NewCipher, which a few years ago merged with Keep to form Threshold. Threshold is the home of TBTC, which is a decentralized and permissionless Bitcoin bridge, primarily to ETH01, but increasingly to other EVM L2s and even some non-EVM platforms as well.
Thank you so much, McLean. Let's kick it off to Kratik.
Hey everyone, I'm Kratik. I'm one of the co-founders at Renzo, along with Lucas. At Renzo, we are home of LRTs. We have Easy ETH as our primary LRT that we're getting onboarded on Spark for,
and we lost him. It's a good thing. It's a good thing we've got you on, Lucas. So wait, we've got him back. Hold on one second. We're going to bring him back to the stage. Kratik, you back?
As you can see, I'm struggling with connectivity issues here. But yeah, as I was saying, we've been operational for almost 2 years, more than 15 chains, and things are moving pretty quickly. Super excited for the Sparkland market.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Lucas, I know you're part of the same team, but introduce yourself and, of course, elaborate.
Appreciate it, Philip. Lucas, founding contributor, Renzo, calling in from sunny Denver today. Just grateful to be a part of this cohort. Jacob and I know ourselves. McLean and I've met a few times as well. So a great cohort of assets being added this week to Spark. Been following Spark and the space for a long time. And Easy ETH, I would say the one thing that Kratik did not mention is Easy ETH is an eigenlayer LRT. It's a restake token where all your yield is auto compounded. It follows you wherever you go. We've been leading the space as far as yield and APY on restaking with Easy ETH, and just grateful to have Easy ETH added to the Spark family and open up new use cases and liquidity for Easy ETH holders.
Awesome. We're very excited to have you on also, Lucas. So welcome to the fold. Sophia, I'm going to throw it to you now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sophia, head of DeFi for Kelp. Just going to say the same thing as Lucas. Super grateful to be on Spark. We've had a lot of demand from retail and the different funds that we work with to be listed. So it's a very exciting day.
Amazing. Okay, cool. And Jacob, last but definitely not the least.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Philip. Yeah, Lucas is showing off the sun. I'm hiding in my cave. Good to meet you, everyone. Jacob Phillips, one of the co-founders of Lombard. Before this, I was working on DeFi Perps protocol, built on Arbitrum for a couple of years, and then before that, I was an investor at Polychain. Spent most of my time in the ventures team. I did a little bit of liquid fund research and some governance stuff. And Lombard is a Bitcoin bridge. We sort of built a security primitive that's the Lombard ledger. It's secured by the Lombard Consortium, a group of institutions that we rallied around to secure the protocol. And then our core product is LBTC, liquid staked Bitcoin. That Bitcoin is currently only staked on Babylon. I feel like Bitcoin liquid staking tokens have been a pretty killer product for distributing Bitcoin throughout DeFi, but very much only the start.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacob. What I think I'm going to do, make a house rule from now on that everyone has to use a fake background to make sure that we all feel equal in a very democratic environment. How's that for moving forward? You will be credited with that,
Sounds
Jacob.
fair.
Awesome. Okay, so thanks, guys. Amazing intros. Of course, very exciting time for everyone, and I think in general sense is a very exciting time to be in the DeFi space. It is alive and well and kicking, and I think this is only the starting point of very exciting times for not only from a project perspective, but retailer and institutions that are all starting to show real, genuine appetite and interest in something that we all believe is the future of finance and personal freedom, right? Or why else do it? Sam, I'm going to hand it to you now. In essence, mate, why does this benefit Spark, and why are obviously onboarding a multitude of new collaterals into the fold an important component and unique strength that Spark can bring to the DeFi landscape?
Yeah, sure. So there's two main components of the Sparkland market that building upon the original design of MakerDAO, now known as Sky, where there was stablecoin lending against crypto collateral. So Sparkland also has this feature where you can borrow USDS or DAI or now USDC as well. We've onboarded more stablecoin capabilities for people to borrow on Sparkland. So this is primarily what people are doing is they come in with collateral and then they borrow stablecoin and they go leverage long on their collateral. But more recently, with the introduction of LSTs, LRTs, these yield-bearing versions of ETH and Bitcoin, we're able to also lend out assets like ETH or like non-yielding versions of Bitcoin, such as CBBTC, and people are able to. It's known as loop leveraging. So this is using the same asset, but you're able to get boosted exposure to the yield that these protocols are each offering. And so we found, along with people going leverage long on their favorite crypto assets, this has increasingly been a very popular use case. And so Sparkland, as a more advanced lending market, is able to provide both of these use cases, and we want to support both of them in all of the cases of these products. So this is as part of just expanding our collateral offering, it makes sense to give users what they want to use. So like adding all these types of collaterals just increases user choice, and so people just they can get exactly what they need within Spark. So this is why it's been a great benefit for us.
So ultimately, the glue that binds it all together and making it an easy, discoverable single source of truth for everything that I imagine is getting quite complicated with obviously new protocols coming into play, new assets being collateralized. It's becoming a pretty tricky space for people to navigate. I've got an interesting question I want to open up to the room here. Do you feel at a DeFi level that there is preferences in camps between maybe a Bitcoin vertical versus an ETH vertical? And if you do believe this is no longer the case, what do you think as an industry, how we can come together and make this kind of a lot more seamless and play with all the different mindsets out there? I'm going to open it up maybe to Sophia. You want to handle this one?
Sure. So I can probably speak more on the ETH camp. One thing that we're very excited about for the next quarter is the rewards from AVSs. So that should increase our native yield by quite a bit. I think sort of the FOMO that's been around like ETH-based assets like us, Renzo, EtherFi, is that we've been very reliant on Eigen. That price has since tanked from a high of 5 in December to like $1 now. So like might as well be an LST, right? But I don't think that all hope is lost. We already have contracts with several AVSs that will be issuing rewards, and that should give us, of course, more profit per loop as we loop, for example, with LSTs like Lido, or even more so with ETH at decent rates. I'll let my colleague speak about BTC.
Awesome. Very, very cool answer. Jacob, you want to handle it from the BTC perspective?
Yeah, sure. I feel like there's definitely camps, but I feel like those camps emerged out of it's sort of like the old money versus the new money in a little bit. Ironically, Bitcoin is like the new money in ETH DeFi. So when we were first building DeFi, there was only one liquid, trustless asset in the ecosystem in abundance, and that was ETH. So this became like the core trading pair, the core sort of collateral for borrow lend. Despite the fact that Bitcoin had sort of been the dominant asset on centralized exchanges and other ecosystems, there's always been this obvious thought of, oh, there's so much value external to existing blockchains. What if we found a way to bridge that in? But there's never really been a catalyst to do so. I think with the emergence of some of the excitement around Bitcoin DeFi in the aftermath of collapse, this sort of collapse of BlockFi and Genesis and some of the great CeFi Bitcoin yield products, we finally, for the first time, started to see the two ecosystems converging a bit. So I don't think long-term there ends up being a differentiation at the end of the day if you can create like a trust minimized form of Bitcoin or, maybe in a couple of years, a fully trustless form of Bitcoin that users would prefer ETH to Bitcoin or Bitcoin to ETH. We'd sort of just view them as two different assets. In the short term, ETH remains like, much, much more in abundance and more liquid on chain. But I think Bitcoin's, starting to give it a little bit of a run for its money. And at the end of the day, both are collaterals for, both sort of solve similar purposes, I think. Bitcoin, of course, only does one thing. And so I think it's kind of, it's sort of a no-brainer that if we could use it in DeFi at scale, we would. Just a matter of making that happen. So, I think this is what Lombard and Threshold and a number of others have been focused on, sort of focusing on like a very narrow core problem to benefit DeFi. Maybe the one other thing I'd note is like, I think a lot of other DeFi protocols have spent time, focused on building an isolated ecosystems, trying to build like Bitcoin L2s or, that have like forks of all the leading DeFi protocols. And I think Lombard's fundamentally taken a different approach. That's there's no reason we need to build a whole parallel DeFi ecosystem just to integrate a new asset within all the battle-tested protocols we've already built. Excited for Bitcoin to become more prevalent in ETH DeFi, though, certainly a little bit of an uphill battle.
Awesome. Yeah, I must be honest, when I was facilitating and organizing everyone's diaries, I felt a little bit awkward, admittingly, to inviting everyone in the same spaces, but it's very good to hear that we're all willing to play nicely in the sandpit. So very happy. Obviously, from our side, we've got a lot on the go, everyone. So we can consolidate these type of initiatives. It's awesome. But Jacob, thank you so much, mate. Lucas or Kratika, I'm going to hand you this next one, maybe, and you can decide who can handle this. From an institutional point of view, what do you see in terms of the demand? I mean, we've been, on the hot heels of what we did last week with the Spark tokenization Grand Prix with RWAs, with enormous figures in the market with Biddle slash BlackRock, Securitize, Centrifuge, and Superstate. What do you see in terms of the appetite at an institutional level? And where do you see kind of that appetite favoring? Is it in the ETH side or is it more in the BTC side?
Yeah, I could take this one. I want to echo what Jacob said. I think there's just um, different kinds of liquidity out in the space, and whether somebody has exposure to Bitcoin or Ethereum, you definitely don't have that competitive nature across the liquidity between the two. It's just a preference of the asset that is being held, or in some cases, what we're seeing is that a lot of the demand on the Renzo side, they are asking for different kind of BTC exposure as well because they tend to hold both assets. Overall, what we've seen in Renzo, like Pratik mentioned, we're almost 2 years in. We started working on Renzo in May. We've seen a very quick maturity in the protocol and our user base, where very early on, everybody was kind of point farming both Eigenlayer and Renzo pre TGE. Which brings in one type of user. And then post TGE and post token, you see the maturity and the demand going to people who value real yield. And those tends to be more institutional or native Web3 funds. So that's where we see the significant demand on the Renzo side. It is these larger institutional LPs that have exposure to ETH that are looking to get additional yield, not only on top of their stake ETH, but on top of like leverage looping or being able to borrow against different collaterals. With Easy ETH, since the beginning of the year, we've been averaging just over 4% APY, which is a whole percentage point higher than liquid staking, and that is very attractive to different asset people that are holding different assets, and depending on their risk exposure, whether they're just holding ETH and want to be long and just want to get additional yield on that, or where we see the majority of demand is what Sam mentioned earlier on leverage looping. So this is being able to use, being able to borrow ETH, which is not yield bearing, and being able to just account for the borrow APY or the cost of that asset, and being able to get exposure leverage on Easy ETH and ETH has been the biggest demand that we've seen in the space.
Awesome.
I'll pause there.
Thanks, Lucas. Yeah. Just a note, we have lost Critique. He's facing some internet issues, so he's bowed out for now, but that's absolutely not a problem. We appreciate his attendance. McLean, we're not going to let you off the hook there, sitting in the corner. What are your views, mate, on the... I think I'm going to kind of spin it into more of a position on volatility and maturity. Sophia had an interesting point on Eigenlayer early on. What's your view on where we're at in terms of just general maturity levels, and how does how do we address the risk and volatility measures that tends to come with the space?
Sure. So I think it's actually been interesting to look. TBTC has been live and initially as a V1 on Keep Network, and then on as V2 on Threshold for coming up on 3 years now. It's been interesting to look at sort of the evolution and kind of user behavior over time, over that 4 years. For I'd say the bulk of TBTC's history, it's primarily been used as a bridge to mint and then swap into, historically WBTC, and then to redeem WBTC back into native Bitcoin. So like very strong bridge velocity historically. And then more recently, we started to see, for a variety of reasons, like an inflection point in TBTC's utility as an asset, as it's gotten onboarded into protocols like Sparkland and others. And I think what I'm optimistic about happening is, obviously, like if you're an institutional investor, you're going to be very comfortable with like the legal framework of using like a single trusted custodian that's a registered entity, like in the case of WBTC or CBBTC. And I think more recently people have started to realize some of the downsides to that model, and starting to sort of become a little bit more comfortable with these more decentralized and trust minimized approaches. Particularly as they've been running TBDC now for almost 4 years without losing any user funds. So what I'm optimistic about is like we'll see sort of an increasing trend towards that behavior where not just retail but all users will shift sort of their trust from these custodial models into more decentralized versions like TBTC and some of the newer stuff like BitVM2. But in terms of like the user behavior, it maps very closely to what people have historically used WBTC for, what retail users are using it for, which is primarily two things: one, to earn yield on your assets, which you can't do on the Bitcoin blockchain, and two, to borrow against that asset. So basically these are sort of the two primary behaviors that both retail and institutionals are using TBTC for. And then, of course, like the bridge aspect is very popular to sort of arb the price differentials between native Bitcoin and TBTC and other wrapped Bitcoin assets using the permissionless bridge.
Awesome. The way you explained was, I mean, it really, at the end of the day, it's quite simple. I think the complexity comes in from an educational point of view. How do we all get on the same page in terms of educating, not only a retailer, which might be familiar with more degen, terminology, but how do we educate institutions and bring them on into a space that still, in my opinion, faces a bit of a PR issue. But I mean, collectively, we're all trying to fight, the good battle and address the massive issues that happened in the last cycle. I think, I think we were on a call earlier and Sam mentioned, the uncollateralized issues of the past. We're obviously in this space now to make sure that we have this, proper form of collateral security, so to speak. But we still face an enormous issue from an educational point of view, and all of these different assets and asset classes. The naming terminology is an enormous challenge for anyone relatively new to the space. So I'm going to open up to the room here. What do you think, as an industry, what do you think we need to do to make it as simple as possible for anyone coming in and going, okay, well, this is my risk profile. This is what I'm looking to achieve. This is the type of yield that I'm, looking for, or what maybe a borrow rate, if that's applicable. What do you think, from an industry point of view, we need to, or how rather, do we need to educate an audience and make sure that we can bring on as many people into the space that can be largely intimidating for the average person out there? Maybe Sophia, we can start with you.
Yeah, I mean, from our side, initially, I think we wanted to go on this like evangelical crusade and just make sure that everybody hears about liquid restaking, and then they're all going to come and restake with kelp. That obviously failed. So I think right now what we are kind of leaning for is educating the low-hanging fruits. So essentially, funds that are kind of more primed for restaking. So they've typically done some staking or have a said interest in DeFi. Those are very easy or more easily convertible. I think on the retail front, we're definitely doing our best. We could do more. I think it's important as well to have like more joint campaigns, like us and Eigen, us and Renzo, maybe, where we essentially educate people on like AVSs. I think most people have no clue like what most of these AVSs are. So like ZK co-processors and et cetera, et cetera. So like these are just kind of far out of reach. And just kind of, as you mentioned, Phil, just simplifying things and not making it too complicated for people. So just kind of explaining it at its core. So this is like all to say, essentially, from our side, what's more interesting for us is to educate folks that we feel will restake. And then as an industry, I think we'll finally get there in a couple of years. But it's too expensive as well to take that as a personal mission, I think, to just kind of educate as many people. Like, it's a really good philosophy, but this industry is also quite short term, and we do that in tandem with the goals that we want to achieve.
I couldn't agree with you more. Short term and very expensive. I think from a marketing educational point of view, this is why joint initiatives like this are so exciting. From purely for putting my marketing hats on now, because one, we have the opportunity to leverage each community, but two, we get to cross pollinate all these ideas, right? And through these very healthy conversations and educational programs, we simplify and unify. Obviously, the end objective, which is, like you said, making things accessible and simple. So you mentioned that you'll be doing a lot more joint initiatives with Renzo. Love that. But Sophia, Culp is
I
not.
didn't wait. I said we are not doing anything as of yet,
Okay.
but I'm open if
Yeah.
Lucas wants to do it. Why not?
I'm just suggesting that you're not off the hook with us. I think Spark would also love to do a lot more collaborative efforts, and we're only starting our journey, but it's going to be very exciting, and a lot more of these type of joint initiatives goes a long way, in terms of impact and reward. So also, Jacob, just in terms of where do you see the challenges, just in terms of like the educational space, and how do you think we can address this to make sure that we can literally like onboard the unbanked population of the world?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start by saying I think Sophia, hit the nail on the head here. A lot of what she said resonated with me quite a bit. The way, like, in crypto, timing is everything. I spent a number of years at Polychain, and then I spent a couple of years building, and both invested in and worked on a number of protocols that were just like weren't solving enough of a pertinent need. The timing being the core piece here, and I think when we think about the full spectrum of users, people I don't think do a good job of like breaking down users into different user categories and actually going to sell to that individual user. People waste so much time, specifically in the Bitcoin space, I think, pitching users who just aren't going to move, or trying to sell them a product that they don't want. And so part of the reason I think Lombard's had a lot of success, and everybody on stage here has had a lot of success, because we've been able to identify the right user base and give them a product in the short term. It just so happens that a lot of big ETH stakers also had a big bag of Bitcoin. So like these were the first people we went to. It was like Sophia said, it was attacking the low hanging fruit and then playing a little bit of the long term game. If you sit there and you're just talking to OG whales in Hong Kong who aren't going to be ready to move their Bitcoin for 2 years, you're going to be toast. You don't have 2 years to wait. So all of this, I think, is an iterative game where you're starting with one group that can sort of take action in the short term, and then you're like setting the foundation for things down the road. So I think that's kind of been the name of the game for us. And all of these, different user bases, like institutions, are much, much longer sales cycle than some of the folks we're working with. But every sort of step you make forward opens up a new possibility in terms of user onboarding, in a sense that like we can't even begin to start having conversations with certain size of Bitcoin holders until we've onboarded a certain amount. And so now Lombard's at the point where we're able to have conversations with the biggest Bitcoin holders in the world fruitfully. So I think it's all about kind of lining things up one step after the other. Growth is reflexive, so you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah, start somewhere with the first step. Sam, you were obviously in New York at the RWA summit last week. What was the general kind of sentiment there, and what was the the average profile of the attendee? Was it more the sort of the advanced degen person that is very well exposed and informed in the space, or was it people curious about it, coming into it, trying to figure it out, and asking where to next, and what is the first step, as Jacob has articulated?
Yeah, definitely not degen. I'd say the complete opposite. Like, if I would have thought a few years back that, I'm doing a panel with like BlackRock, Fidelity's there, like all these major institutions, everybody's just super excited they want to get involved. And so with the change in the regulatory environment that just happened over the past few months, I think this is like an inflection point, and we're going to start to see a lot of the world coming on chain. And with Spark and our great partners here, I think everybody here has been successful in their vertical, and we're all in a great position to facilitate the onboarding of the next the next wave of people that are ready to get on DeFi rails and get away from the legacy traditional finance system, which as I every now and then I'm interacting a little bit in TradFi, and whenever you go there, you kind of see, okay, this is like a refresher of why we're in crypto, because crypto is just infinitely better. Like TradFi runs on like spreadsheets. It's very old school. There, you got T0, T1 settlement. It's completely, none of this needs to exist. If this stuff's on crypto rails, like it's just so much better. And so the institutions are aware of this. And the biggest takeaway from last week at DAS, I mean, you had the sitting president address the Digital Asset Summit directly. So like this is a change. Like make no mistake. So it's very exciting.
Sam, you say it's kind of interesting. The notion that DeFi is infinitely better, I think, becomes true over time. But I think a lot of DeFi protocols sort of take that truth to be a little bit secured, as if there's not a huge amount of work we have to do to get DeFi to be competitive with CeFi. And honestly, I feel like a lot of what Spark and the Maker ecosystem have been really successful at has been like helping bridge the gap, particularly on the yield front, because there are fundamentally it's better, but there are things that are really important to the user base of institutions and the group of people that we're trying to onboard, that DeFi just doesn't feel that attractive just yet from a risk reward perspective, or is in the process of getting there at least.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not saying it's easy whatsoever. I mean, the traditional finance system has a lot of network effects. It's very ingrained, and so getting everybody to move over is obviously a huge task. But I'm a firm believer that it's unless there's like some sort of like very hostile switch in direction, just the capital efficiency will just continue to suck things. It's like a black hole in my mind, which is DeFi. So we've got stablecoins, which are like the first bastion into TradFi. We're pulling it in, and so you guys are able to tokenize the more DeFi side of things, like ETH and Bitcoin, and we're sucking in the capital on the US dollar side, which then pulls treasuries, which then it's pulling higher risk assets in TradFi, such as corporate debt. And it's just one thing after the other. And it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort. But I think just step by step, we're getting there.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes. Sorry, go ahead.
On the BTC side, the proof is sort of definitely in the pudding. And like, I think right now we're all losing to like the ETFs in terms of where most of the deposit flows are going. So I think that would be a failure case for DeFi, which I mean, I'm optimistic that won't happen. But if fast forward 5-10 years from now, if there's more Bitcoin sitting in ETFs than on DeFi rails, that would be I think a quite disappointing outcome.
Yeah, the one say that kind of like listening to all of this, like it kind of feels like TradFi is like the old software version in the Matrix, right? Like I mean, and like now we're kind of like just kind of pivoting towards DeFi, which is not easy, as Sam said, but I think it's something that it's going to take some time, and it's obviously like not working for most people. And I think this is sort of like maybe this is the optimist in me that's kind of talking, but I think it's the idea of like having permissionless systems that are like based on code and math and like not based on humans is a good way in the sort of like evolution sense.
Sophia, I think we're all in the industry because we're optimistic about the future. It definitely would not be a good thing to be pessimistic. Developing such a complex system.
I'm not pessimistic.
Yeah, going against massive gorillas like BlackRock, sucking off all that Bitcoin is scary. But I think Sam was also talking about, obviously onboarding the new generation of potential users. But I think as an industry also, we need to make sure that we retain a lot of this, the user base that we've worked so hard in developing over the last 6-7 years, which is obviously an enormous challenge with new, easy, low-hanging, options like ETFs out there. So we need to make it as easy as possible to onboard and retain and create this environment that isn't complicated and is more sticky. Something at Spark that we're trying to do is we're trying to create this almost lifestyle type environment where we can tap into more of a loyalty type extension. So you come to one place where obviously we've brought on all these new obviously awesome collateral components, but then creating much more reason to be with within the the Spark ecosystem, creating almost like a, and I'm not going to say it for its exact terminology, but creating almost like a super DApp, where you can go to and just find all your sort of relevant needs and requirements met in one single place. So retention is a big part, which I think we kind of don't get right, because also, Sophia, what you're saying, like it's so short term, which I feel like it's such, we put so much effort into this, and like if we look at a cycle, cyclical nature of like a year or 2 years, what are we building? For us to start all over again, it's really tiring, and it's defeatist if we go out there thinking it's like, well, now we need to start from scratch again. So for me, it's more collaboration like this that's going to make us win at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you provide the right yields, safety with the smart contracts and easy onboarding, then there's no reason why you shouldn't.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, if I could chime in here for a second. From the very beginning, when we started building Renzo, all this kind of resonates. Everybody's talking about easy. That's essentially where the name Easy ETH came from. And I think there's a maturity curve, though, that protocols have to go through from a security aspect to be able to develop the rails that are needed to grow to a certain size. And time actually is super important from a security perspective. And what we're starting to see, and I think the fact that all of us are on this call and are being added to Spark, part of that maturity cycle is also the DeFi integrations and the partners that trust you to be able to use you as collateral that really open up the use cases and the trust within the space. So I think a lot of times we want to be able to do more and go faster. We definitely have that appetite at Renzo, but there is a natural cycle of just being battle tested as a protocol with high TVL from a security standpoint and DeFi integrations, and having your peers actually look through your code and build up the confidence and the trust to be able to use you as collateral or vice versa. So I think what you're going to see from Renzo is we are on this path of abstracting away all the complexities away from users. So we have a very different approach. A lot of our users don't really care where the yield is coming from. They want that abstracted away, and to be able to understand every single ABS from a restaking perspective is very complex. So we focus on security. We focus on DeFi integrations that are also keeping us in check and making sure the protocol is actually doing what it was intended to do. And you're going to see this evolution over the next 6 to 12 months where it's going to get abstracted away even more. And if you're looking for a specific strategy or don't want a strategy, you'll be able to kind of one click deploy capital and know exactly where your funds are going because it's being done through a smart contract and not a third party counterparty that's taking your funds and managing them on your behalf. So I think staying true to that core, thesis that we have from a DeFi perspective is going to be super important to actually grow with institutions as well.
Yeah, it's obviously we talk about trust and we talk about permissionless based, protocol, which is relatively new terminology, right, to CeFi. But how do we, as an industry, build more trust, and how do we educate an institution that it is automated at the end of the day? Because they're so used to so many different, kinks in the supply chain that when we present something that is streamlined into, a 1 point or 2 point solution, they just don't get it. So McLean, when dealing with institutions, how do you think, obviously trust is important, track record is important, but how do you think as an industry, how do we build that and entrench trust over a longer period of time, to make sure that institutions know that it isn't just some sort of gimmick, shrouded in some code that they don't understand?
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of what Lucas just said, which is around part of it is just time in market and time where a significant amount of TVL is at risk and it's functioned correctly. And unfortunately for like the wrapped Bitcoin, particularly like the quote unquote decentralized wrapped Bitcoin, there's been like historically a series of very high profile failures, which I think really set back the BTC-Fi space pretty significantly. Where basically like the underlying collateral was essentially taken for either part of bankruptcy proceedings or because of some sort of government intervention, and obviously that's sort of the most catastrophic possible outcome for a kind of BTC wrapper. So part of that is just like as the space earning back the trust that was lost because of those events. And then I think the other part is pretty ties back into the marketing education aspect in terms of like how do you explain to people what these things are exactly and how they work, both in a way that is understandable. So not everyone is going to be interested, have the time or the ability to sort of dig deep into the code base or understand really from a hardcore technical perspective how the underlying custody model works. And so there's like a fundamental tension between like explaining it in like a high level, easy to understand way while saying like correct. And I think that is a difficult thing to manage. But I think something that we need to do as a space if we're not gonna sort of keep running this playbook back where people have a sort of a misunderstanding of exactly what the trust assumptions are, and then that comes back to bite them in the end when something bad happens.
Yeah, very true. Cool. Everyone, I'm looking at time. Of course, we're nearing the end. I think what we can look to do is wrap up soon. Maybe just get some final thoughts on, and obviously I'm going to use this as a selfless plug, so forgive me for this, but I would really love to hear from everyone on the call. Why Spark and what stood out for you, and why does this partnership make so much sense for you? I'm going to go backwards now. We can start with Jacob, go to Lucas, Sophia, and then end with McLean. So, Jacob.
Perfect. So everything about Lombard's focus going forward is about onboarding as much Bitcoin into on-chain ecosystems as we can, no matter how it has to happen. Working with many different forms of Bitcoin security tech, trustless and trusted. Working with many different chains, working with many different DeFi protocols, and trying to craft the right strategies to get people using Bitcoin within DeFi as if it were their own. I think there's a couple like core simple use cases that people are looking to do on chain. I think Bitcoin trading is going to see a ton of growth in the coming months and years. And obviously, one of the ones that I think everybody is excited about, VCs, Bitcoin holders, builders alike, is everybody wants to get USD borrow against their Bitcoin. Use Bitcoin for the one thing it's great as, which is decentralized collateral, and start putting those to work. So I think the entire DeFi space is going to see a huge boost from an influx of billions and billions of dollars of Bitcoin that'll come across as soon as possible. Spark, of course, I think falls in a very small category of battle tested blue chip, soon to be leading the institutional charge. At the end of the day, I think Lombard's worked with 70 or 80 DeFi protocols. And of course, out of personal interest, I'm always excited to work with brand new people doing net new things. But in terms of what's working in DeFi, Spark's been at the heart of it. So, I think I'm personally much more interested in going really deep on crafting very specific use cases that we can go to pitch to some of the biggest Bitcoin holders in the world and get them on board with some of the people who are leading the space. Spark, and I think the broader ecosystem that you guys have been building in has been sort of fostering the entire DeFi space for quite some time, and will continue to do so. It sounds like a lot of the focus is on education and UX from the Spark team, which is really exciting to see. Thanks for organizing this. Pleasure to be working with all of you.
Thank you, Jacob. Do we have your permission to use some of those amazing references on our website?
Absolutely, of course.
Always kidding, man. Okay, Lucas?
Renzo, I think the first focus, like I mentioned, is security and being able to give users the highest yield on their ETH, which we've accomplished so far. Once you take that, the DeFi integrations and the use cases to be able to use EasyETH to, for example, borrow USDS is very important. And it's when we look back 2 years ago to our original white paper and internal docs, we did have Spark and MakerDAO as kind of that flagpole that we were working towards. So to be here today and see EasyETH onboarded and know that we've done what we've set out to do is, I think, massive for the space and also for restaking in general. If you think about where we were a year ago and people not understanding whether there was going to be yield or where was it going to be coming from and whether it was going to be secure enough. We've been able to get to the point where Aave and Spark and Compound and all these blue chip DeFi protocols that have very stringent requirements around what's needed to get onboarded feel comfortable with a protocol like Renzo and Easy ETH, which opens up a lot of doors. The main use case that we are going to see unlocked with Easy ETH is the borrowing of USDS. If you can imagine holding ETH that's yielding over 4%, which auto compounds the exact same way that an LST does, and being able to use that as collateral to borrow USDS is going to be massive. It's what our institutional and large funds have been looking for. And we're just grateful to, like I started off the call, grateful to achieve this milestone with a great group of very trusted protocols as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. We're grateful. We are also grateful to have you on board. So thanks for joining the teams here. Sophia?
Yeah, I think for us it's kind of full circle. So we're on Aave, Euler, Morpho, and now finally Spark. So a couple of things that I really like about Spark. McLean, you were mentioning wrapped Bitcoin. So I think Spark was one of the first main money market to actually delist WBTC for concerns. And at the time, they received a lot of scrutiny, but then they obviously sort of had confidence in their own risk assessment. So that's something that gives us a lot of confidence that we're on a platform that is sort of security first. Similar to what Lucas said, we're looking to borrow some stables on Spark, and that's going to unlock a lot of that for our funds. We will also be adding the Spark market on our vaults. So the AG ETH vault, HG ETH vault, Cian's vault, that's all in the works. And I think also on the marketing front, you guys are killing it. Phil, I really like what you post on the socials. So well done there, and very happy to be in the Spark family.
Thank you so much for that. I love feedback on the marketing front. I'm always open for that. Unless it's really bad marketing, then I don't want to hear about it. So thank you very much for that. That's awesome. Thank you. McLean.
Yeah, so with TBTC, if you look on chain, the primary use case is borrowing against your Bitcoin. And I expect that very quickly Spark will also be one of the biggest liquidity sinks on chain for TBTC. The way we think about TBTC is we just want it to be the most robust and secure decentralized Bitcoin asset. Right now, that means it's an honest majority. In the future, there's some interesting stuff happening in Bitcoin around your BPM2 and potential opcodes and underlying changes to Bitcoin. But basically, we just want it to be a place where you can mint TBTC with your Bitcoin and then park it in whatever DeFi protocol you want, and then basically just be comfortable forgetting about it for an extended period of time. We don't only have to closely monitor the protocol, be constantly sort of making sure that everything's okay. We want it to be maximally trusted and secure and Lindy. And I think that matches very well with Spark is one of a handful of OG blue chip protocols that I think pairs very well from a lindiness, trustedness perspective with TBTC.
Awesome. I think you have all given us some shining reviews there, so much appreciated. What resonated was security, trust, experience, track record, and of course, obviously the team that backs everything. So thank you very much, guys, for joining today's session. We were targeting about 30 minutes because we thought, we would have pretty much enough to cover. But I think the chat ended up to be extremely rich, and we covered a number of topics. Lucas, next time people walk in the background, you can invite them to pop their head in and say hello to the audience. But I think we're all jealous of the sun that you're sitting in. Sam, any final words from you?
Yeah, sure. So for me, one of the big things about DeFi is user choice. And so by Sparkland being a neutral platform, not entirely neutral, but we basically want to enable users as much as possible to be able to use the assets that they choose. And so this is all in keeping with that, we want to continue to onboard high quality assets such as all the great teams here. They've reached a threshold of success, and we want to enable their user bases to leverage their assets. And so we're very excited at Spark to have all these new assets on Sparkland.
Amazing. Thanks, Sam. Okay, guys, we're going to look to wrap this up. I do ask, once I stop the broadcast, just please stick around until we discontinue all of it. So, guys, thanks for joining. And to all our listeners and community members out there, thank you for dialing in to episode 3. I think things are really starting to take shape, and exciting times ahead for the Spark ecosystem and our many awesome partners. So thanks, everyone, for joining this call, and thanks for listening in.